Bob Miller. It's pleasant scenes like this that have drawn city dwellers to the New Jersey countryside. Here on the banks of the Ramapo River in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey, people like the Larry Katzes have built their dream homes. The Katzes is that blue bi-level over there. But they, like most of their neighbors along here, are sorry that they ever built their homes here, because they are at the bottom of the notorious Passaic floodplain. I've been here and across the river in Wayne on numerous occasions, always to report on the tragedy of flooded homes. In this edition of People, Places, Things, we ask why, year after year, towns like Pompton Lakes remain at the mercy of devastating floods. The day the Pompton Lakes police took me out on a cruise on the Ramapo, a native son of the area, journalist Howard Ball, warned me against letting appearances deceive me.
Some folks come out from the city, the pressures of the city. They stand here on a sunny, balmy day like today and look at this property, and it is idyllic, as you said. They get trapped into buying riverfront property in a floodplain, and then later on when the water comes up, they have great problems, really great.
Some of the folks who live along the riverfront described just how great their problems are.
I've been living in Pompton Lakes for 5 years. I've been flooded 3 or 4 times.
I've been living here 9 years. I've been flooded 7 times.
I've been here 9 years and 7 times.
I lived here 10 years. I've been flooded about 12 times.
3.5 years, about 3 times.
It's even worse down on the Paquonic, where Dot and Huey Anderson built their home.
We are here about 9 years, flooded actually in the house about 5 to 6 times, and we've had many nuisance floods.
These people know what a hell the Passaic floodplains can be.
People don't realize, even people sitting at home watching a television program, say, oh, those poor people. Nobody knows until they're in it, because our friend, right, Stan came and helped us when we were just flooded recently to help clean up. He said, Dorothy, he said, you talk about it, you hear about it. He says, I never knew what it was, but he was here with us when the water was in the house. People say, people came around here, they said, you got water in your house? They don't know it's the river. They don't know that it could sit in your home for days and days on end, depending upon how the river goes down. And, you got water in and out, right? Like a toilet bowl flushing, going down.
The government sends shots to the moon that each day that they're up there, they spend the amount of money that it would take to fix these rivers for hundreds of thousands of people, so that we wouldn't have to go through what we have to go through. The mud, the gook, the oil, everything that we find through our houses, the odor that we have to put up with for months afterwards.
We know what conditions we suffer when we do get a flood. It's filth, it's dirt, it's unhealthy. Snakes as big as your body come down out of the mountains during flood. And we've put up through all this. But certainly in a time such as the governor asks for an income tax to help him in his state, we're asking for the same type of help now. We're asking for help to save our homes, our families, our possessions, and everything that we do own. And I don't think it's much at all to ask for.
The flood of '68 killed this woman's husband, but he didn't drown. He died of heartbreak. Peter Binns was slightly more fortunate. The flood of '68 spared his life, but took his health. His cellar stayed dry. He owned the best pump in the area.
If I did not have the pump going, I wouldn't have lost my walls. I did not have equal pressure in my house. In other words, if I had let the water in my basement, there would have been equal pressure. But the way it was, my basement was dry. The water surrounded the house, and the pressure caved in the 40-foot wall.
Maybe the time has come to stop construction in the wetlands.
One of the only things we can do now is to keep more people out of here, because the more macadam, the more houses, the more runoff. The more runoff, the higher the river goes. It's as simple as that.
Leon Feinblum and his lawyer disagree. Mr. Feinblum owns this ball field, plus some 50 other acres of wetlands in Pompton Lakes.
I believe that if a property owner is paying taxes, he should be entitled to use of his land. He should be able to make it productive.
The people I had spoken with hadn't found their investment all that productive. I wondered why they just don't pack up and move.
If I could sell a house, I'd sell it. Definitely.
I can't even sell my house sometimes. People know that there was a flood area, and they're not going to buy the house. You have to tell them that they're living in a flood area, that they're buying in a flood area. Whereas when I bought the house, they didn't have to do that. And it was always a flood area. And so I have nowhere else to go. I have to wait.
I can't afford to sell my house for nothing, and that's about the only thing I'd get for it. 4 children, I have 5 bedrooms, and I just couldn't replace my home for what I'd be able to get for it.
I'm staying too because it's a matter of money. I have a nice home and the mortgage is low, and I can't afford to move anyplace else.
Anytime it rains heavy, they write about it in the paper and they hold meetings. Then as soon as we get a beautiful day like today, they forget about it.
Ella Philippone of the Passaic Coalition says it's high time that the state and municipalities buy out developers like Leon Feinblum.
First thing that must be done is that the floodplain lands that are still subject to development should be purchased, so that no more of these inadequacies, these buildings in these flood-prone areas can be built.
Will the taxpayer stand for that, though?
Somewhere.
The taxpayer who is not affected, the guy in the middle of Morristown.
I think that most probably, if you look at the Green Acres votes that have been passed in the last several years by the citizens in New Jersey, if you analyze these, you'll see that the heavy vote for Green Acres bond issues came from northern New Jersey. And yet northern New Jersey has not seen a proportionate amount of these Green Acres monies. The last amount of Green Acres land that was bought in this area was right here, and that was in 1961.
The people who live in these areas that are not affected by the flooding, you feel will okay the extra taxes?
Yes, I don't think there would be that heavy in extra taxes, because the people recognize the problems that occur. It's costing them money now because we constantly have to help these people who are in the flood-prone areas. It's going to be more and more costly. So whichever way you look at it, it's going to cost the public. And so the sooner we start, the cheaper the land is going to be. Today, a parcel of land is cheaper than it will be tomorrow.
Is Green Acres money available?
Yes, it should be. As a matter of fact, there is a bill before the New Jersey legislature. It's either being drafted now or it will be there soon, which requires or requests the legislature to give a priority ranking to floodplain land acquisition. And this is something that the Passaic River Coalition has fostered for 6 years, that we place a priority on the acquisition of floodplain land. And the next thing is to move people out.
I suggested that Mrs. Philippone tell that to the Andersons. She agreed.
Mr. Anderson, what about moving out of here?
Well, we've contemplated it, but I really can't afford to replace what we have here. It's a nice place. It's a nice town. I have the 4 children, dead-end street.
Okay, Mrs. Philippone, the ball is in your court. What about somebody like this? What do we do with them?
Well, this is a problem that I think our total regional society and the state and the federal government have to recognize, that that these municipalities that have permitted development in wet areas and are continuing to permit development in wet areas and are continuing to permit development that will further encroach on people like the Andersons, bring more water down here so that they will suffer, so that we have ratables in the upland. I think the whole community, and I'm not speaking just of Lincoln Park and Pequannock, but I'm speaking of all the communities that make up the Passaic River Basin, 112 of them, have to get together and solve this problem. They've got to pool their money, municipal money, county money, and federal money. And if we can get our 7 congressmen, all 7 congressmen, to focus on an acquisition program that would take care of the economic problems of people like the Andersons, so that we can find, there's still other land available in the Passaic River Basin, if we can find it, and if we can focus our intent on helping the people instead of political rhetoric, then maybe we can finally get a flood control program started after 100 years of discussion and more heartache than you can imagine.
Since the flood victims can't escape the floodplains, I imagined the next best thing is to hang in and fight like blazes for flood control.
I've gone to meetings and I saw absolutely nothing happening, so I just stopped going. It just was a waste of my time.
I've just gone to the meeting.
We're all too busy to continue this. We've gone to meetings, but how much can we fight? We expect our politicians who are well paid to take care of these things, because we're busy working and trying to make ends meet, and we're busy the high taxes we pay, and we find the politicians should get on the ball and take care of this matter.
Yeah, I tried to get interest, but as soon as you get interest, there's people that are higher than you are, and you just go right down the drain. You don't stand a chance.
In '68, when this old bridge was swept away, Lee Grossman joined the North Jersey Flood Control Committee. His group became influential enough to stop construction on the new bridge until specifications for the present higher level were approved. Recently, Lee's committee folded up. No floods, no more active participation.
I think it's fortunate and unfortunate, Ray, really, that we did not have another 68 flood in 70, 72, 74. We were pretty well geared up. We had an organization that had many member communities. We had county interest, and we had a lot of state interest. But because there was just not enough high water, unfortunately, as I say, fortunately, the thing just died for a lack of sufficient people to follow these through.
Lee intends to reactivate his flood control group because he's encouraged by the progress already achieved.
We have gotten further now than ever before. Governor Byrne has approved. We have gone past the state level, which is step 6 in 18 steps of the Army Corps plan. And Governor Byrne has approved a flood control program. The big holdup now, I think, is going to be in funding through Congress. There are many other steps, but that is going to be the big holdup.
In Lincoln Park, we told the council president what Mrs. Bricado had said about entrusting local politicians with the onus of resolving the flooding problems.
I think that the municipality can take some action, but basically it is a county, state, and national problem. It's a regional problem, and it affects municipalities, it affects areas outside a particular municipality, a particular county. In Morris County in particular, you have a situation where there are 39 municipalities and only 2 municipalities, Lincoln Park and Pequannock Township, are in favor of Flood Plan 2B. We are also on the border of Passaic and Essex County, and there are various sentiments in Essex County concerning Flood Plan 2B as well. And
why would they be against it? Aren't they for flood control?
Well, basically, they have a variety of reasons. I believe ratables happen to be a great concern. I believe in Montville, if the Two Bridges Reservoir is included in this project, approximately 1,200 acres will be underwater in the Montville Township area.
Fragmented as it may be, New Jersey's political system is the only one Dot Anderson can turn to in her need.
All right, well, let me put it this way. Like us, even though we may get hit in our homes, say maybe this year, maybe again next year, then why doesn't the government pick up all of this and then replace our homes at full value?
I'll tell you something. The political system, and this amazed me because I got involved in Passaic River problems in 1970. Never had the politicians from Passaic County, Essex, and Morris sat down and really talked the Passaic River flooding problems over man to man, woman to woman. They started last summer, and it was amazing that they could all agree that there was a problem. They were all surprised that there was a problem, and we've known it all these years. So we've got to move them. And if the municipalities that have been for Plan 2B and the ones that are against Plan 2B continue to fight one another and don't finally say, look, we've gotten to a stalemate, now we've got to see what's next. We're going to be fighting forever, and it's going to be the people that suffer, not the political system.
Well, then maybe you better talk to this man who owns that property just a little bit down the track, right? There's a newspaper article. He wants to build townhouses and build up his land 194 feet. And what are we down here?
183.
183.
What do you think would happen?
I think
It would be a natural water stop, and the flooding would be that much worse.
I'm just curious about
And
something.
he is a real estate man. So go talk to him. Get a hold of him next.
The council, in its wisdom, deemed that if we raised our property up 8 feet and built buildings, we would be throwing water onto someone else's property. And therefore, they denied the use of the property because we would have been creating a flood problem for someone else.
When it rains in the Catskills, the water table rises in Pompton Lakes. The Passaic floodplains are nature's catch basin for the Jersey City and Newark watersheds. The Pompton River, draining its tributaries, the Paquonic, Wanacue, and Ramapo, enters the main stream at 2 bridges. Downstream in Wayne, the Pompton joins the Rockaway at the headwaters of the Passaic River. Known as one of the nation's most polluted rivers. It's also regarded as one of the most treacherous. There are 220,000 families like the Andersons and the Mercados in the 900-square-mile basin called the Passaic floodplains. Flood damages cost them an average of $25 million a year. Insurance companies estimate that during the course of a 30-year mortgage, there's a 26% chance of a major flood occurring within the 100-year flood zone. And due to indiscriminate landfill and the proliferation of blacktop, the runoff of wastewaters is becoming more unmanageable by the year. Local rivers used to take 48 hours to crest. Now, it takes them 5. The Army Corps of Engineers recommends that its Plan 2B be authorized. It calls for channeling excess water to a dry detention reservoir at 2 bridges. A 7-mile dam would then hold floodwaters in a 32-square-mile area known as Great Peace Meadows. But Governor Brendan Byrne wants a permanent pure water reservoir instead, like this one at Wanacue. Plan 2B also calls for channel improvements, 52 miles of levees, the raising of all major roads, and reconstruction of 21 bridges. The price tag, close to $1 billion. The Pentagon informed us that the project has been approved by the Chief of Engineers. His report is now being reviewed by the Secretary of the Army prior to its transmittal to Congress.
We have asked questions. We've presented over 100 questions to the Corps of Engineers that need to be answered before this project should be developed. This project lies along a fault. We have a dormant fault, which is known as the Ramapo Fault here in New Jersey. It goes approximately in this direction. Geologists at Rutgers University in Newark have asked whether the great weight of this water could activate this fault. This question should be answered before we go into any kind of engineering design.
You mean if we do what Plan B says, we might cause an earthquake?
We could. That question has to be answered. We don't say it will. We say the question has to be answered before it happens. The engineering study should be done. And there are many, many of these types of questions that have to be answered before a construction project of this type begins.
New Jersey Congressman Robert Rowe reminds us that the plan is not frozen in stone. It only encourages the 117 communities directly involved to pull together at last. That would be a novelty. As the Corps report points out, New Jersey towns are notorious for their historic inability to arrive at a consensus. The floodplains people I met gave me the impression that a consensus is overdue.
I think the time from planning to doing has really passed, and part of the problems that we now have as far as the great development along the floodplain are a result of the delays in inaction that has occurred in the previous years.
The state has been fooling around with floodplain zoning since 1972. We don't have floodplain zoning in the Passaic. We have what they call quick and dirty floodplain delineation through HUD. We don't have it. And nobody has ever cared about Passaic because it's a difficult problem. It's too political. It's Passaic County against the Essex County people, against now Morris County. It's a political football, and it involves a lot of money. A lot of condominiums are planned. A lot of high-rises are planned, townhouses. Every day, I get a call from people who say, what do we do?
I know there can be something done about it. Because it's proven that each little thing that they do improves it. So if they weren't...
Like what?
Like dredging, little things. Dredging, building little dams, and that's a big help. And if only they do it on a bigger scale, it just might rectify all these floodings.
Whatever level it takes, we certainly should try to reach it and not just give up on it like we've gone for 7 or 8 years, some of these people, and got no results. I think we should keep right on fighting no matter how high it takes it, whether it be President Ford himself.
I feel that with the amount of building in this floodplain, with the amount of cement, macadam that's on our side, that the flood will come. The magnitude of 1945 or 1937, God forbid 1903. And if it should happen, instead of 8 lives and $70 million, which we lost in 1968, I can say we'll lose 250 people and billions of dollars.
All right, is there anything that we can do now that will prevent this from happening?
Not as the river stands now, no.
It's going to be a while before the people that are here are going to get any benefit from it. And frankly, I wouldn't like to be living in a floodplain waiting for it to happen.
Regional planning is going to be an absolute necessity to the survival of the Northeast, in my opinion, because we're one big city from Baltimore to Boston. And in the absence of it, we're going to commit suicide in our own waste.
The trouble with the people of the floodplains is not so much apathy as it is bewilderment. The issue of flood control for the Passaic River Basin is so complex that it creates political paralysis. And yet, until all 8 counties and the majority of the 185 communities involved pool their resources, the only thing that will happen is that studies will go on piling up, and so will flood damage. We hate to sound alarmist, but in the 100-year calendar of killer floods, the next big one is due about now. Well, if it comes, and the tragedy comes with it, perhaps government officials on all levels will capitulate and take the precautions recommended by the Army Corps of Engineers as far back as 1936. Until then, the residents of the Passaic Valley will live in fear. For people, places, things, I'm Bob Miller. Thank you for joining us.